In the studio tonight, we're reviewing the new 12th generation Razer Blade 15 Advanced, the most compact 15-inch gaming laptop. But can this tiny chassis with a powerful Intel i7 12th generation CPU and an NVIDIA RTX 3070 Ti keep its cool? Hi, this is David at Mash IT, and having reviewed a few 12th generation i7 CPUs in these gaming laptops, I've come to realise that these CPUs need a lot of power and a lot of wattage to get the best out of them. So how does it cope in the slim aluminium chassis of this Razer Blade 15 Advanced? We're going to be looking at the performance, the software, the thermals, the noise, and of course the gaming to help you decide if this Razer Blade 15 Advanced is the right laptop for you. Now please remember to like and consider subscribing because it really does help our channel grow and continue to bring this great content to you. Now let's get on with the video. Looking at this 2022 Razer Blade 15 Advanced, you would be forgiven for thinking it's a 2021 or even a 2020 Razer Blade 15 Advanced. Because other than the spec stickers that tell you what's in the laptop, there's not really a lot else going on, and Razer seems to stick to the tried and tested formula of this slim, compact, milled aluminium chassis that feels solid and looks great. And the laptop looks very professional other than the lit Razer logo on the top, which can also be turned off in the Synapse software. Now this year, as well as the new internals, Razer has made a couple of subtle changes as well, and we will be looking at those as we look over the laptop. One of the first changes is the new finish on this year's Razer Blade 15 Advanced. It's more resistant to fingerprints, so as you can see, touching this laptop, it's not quite as bad as the previous years, which are an absolute fingerprint magnet. Now you will still get some fingerprints on this new finish, but it certainly looks a lot nicer than previous Razer Blades. But I would still recommend using your microfiber cloth. Keep it handy or get yourself a nice skin. Now, as well as being incredibly compact for a 15-inch gaming laptop, it's also pretty light at only 4.4 pounds. And consider the powerful components this thing is packing, that is quite a lightweight. It also has a great selection of ports on either side of the laptop, with the left side having its proprietary power jack, two USB Type A ports, a Thunderbolt 4 port, and a headset jack. And on the right side, we've got a Kensington lock, an HDMI 2.1, another USB-A port, and then also another Thunderbolt 4 port, and lastly a full-size SD card slot, which as being a content creator myself or doing photography, that's really handy to have on your laptop. And many gaming laptops don't have a card reader. With regards to the specs, our unit has the 12th generation Intel i7 12800H CPU, an RTX 3070 Ti graphics card, 16GB of DDR5 RAM, and a 1TB Gen 4 M.2 SSD. With regards to the screen, we've got in both the 360 1080p panel and the 1440p 240Hz panel, so we will be comparing those later on in the review. Opening the unit is a one-handed affair with a stiff but very well engineered hinge that has minimal wobble, which is great if you're typing with the laptop on your lap. It just locks into place and it's nice and sturdy. Now the palm rest is using the same finish as the outer part of the laptop with the more fingerprint resistant material that they've used. But I can guarantee you're going to be constantly cleaning the palm rest under the WASD keys. The trackpad is glass and incredibly roomy and got to be one of the best trackpad on any Windows machine. It glides responsively and accurately and the gestures work brilliantly. I absolutely love this trackpad. Moving up to the keyboard, and this is another change for 2022. They've improved the keyboard this year. We've got slightly bigger keycaps and a slightly nicer typing experience. They've also moved the power button from the speaker grill into the keyboard. And as somebody that's never particularly liked Razer Blade keyboards for typing, this is a much appreciated upgrade. As usual, this is a per key backlit RGB keyboard that's controlled in Synapse. There are plenty of options available for different colour schemes, or you can set up your WSD key and other keys as individual colours. Always love that, and the lighting is absolutely vibrant. Now, either side of the keyboard, we've got the speaker grills, and this is another change for 2022. The actual speaker grills have now got milled holes either side, and it looks a lot cleaner. Previous years had a bit of a mesh on there which looked a bit messy and easily attracted dust. This looks a lot more professional this year. And you see subtle changes that do add up. And also the speakers sound like this. Audio test at 80% volume. For 15-inch speakers, I'm actually really impressed. They get incredibly loud. That's only at 80% volume. It's one of the louder laptops I've actually had through the studio recently for gaming. The only thing I can say, it could do with a little bit more bass, but otherwise very crisp, very clear speakers. Moving up to the screens, both the 1080p and the 1440p screens look great with good contrast and colours, but only average brightness at just over 300 nits. Now the 1080p 360Hz panel is definitely slightly faster, but unless you're an esports player that needs the absolute maximum frames per second, you're probably going to struggle to notice the difference over the great 240Hz panel. And I would recommend that most users get that QHD 240Hz panel for the improved clarity of text and image quality that you get from that QHD panel. It really is a great screen to work and play on. Now above the screen we have the webcam, which looks and sounds like this. And this is a test of the webcam and the microphones on the 2022 Razer Blade 15 Advanced. Now all the models also include Windows Hello, which is incredibly responsive and accurate and logs you in really quickly, and it's got to be my favourite way of logging into Windows. Now getting to the internals in this laptop is incredibly easy, just removing a few screws, and gives us access to the 2 removable DDR5 slots, and that is really nice to see in such a compact 15-inch chassis. Plus we also have 2 Gen 4 M.2 slots, one of which is populated with that 1TB SSD. We also have the 2-fan and vapor chamber cooling solution that Razer have been using for a few years. So let's put it back together now and see if this can actually handle that 12th gen CPU. So if you're familiar with Razer blades, you'll know that Razer prioritise the compact chassis and the fan noise over the performance. This means that although we have a 12th generation i7 12800H and an NVIDIA RTX 3070 Ti in this laptop, it won't run at the same wattages as a bigger Razer Blade 17 or an Alienware X17R2. Now the performance of the CPU and the GPU can be adjusted via profiles in the Synapse software. We completed testing of Cinebench R23 in each of the profiles, and you can see by the results how much they differ. Even on the highest profile, the custom boost mode, the 12800H in this laptop is still much lower than all the other 12th generation gaming laptops we've tested, but it does score higher than last year's 11th gen CPUs. But with these new 12th generation CPUs being so powerful, I actually don't mind that Razer have done this. So rather than let this thing absolutely burn with the temps like Dell do, they've made it much more constrained. And to be honest with you, these 12th gens are so powerful that even with its reduced wattage, it will cut through anything you throw at it. Now with regards to the NVIDIA RTX 3070 Ti, in the boost mode, we get a maximum TGP of 105 watts. And if you've got it in the balanced mode, you get 80 watts. Now this is about 50 watts less than the X17R2 and the MSI G76 with the equivalent RTX 3070 Ti. But as you can see in the gaming benchmarks, this laptop still performs incredibly well. Now the 1080p panel that we're actually using right here has actually got a MUX switch which will need to be rebooted to enable, so if you want to get to the dedicated graphics card. And if you choose the QHD model, you've actually got Advanced Optimus and the MUX switch. So with the Advanced Optimus you can switch to the dedicated GPU without even a reboot. So for a bit of gaming, we fired up Warzone. Now even in balanced mode with its reduced TGP on the CPU and the GPU, Warzone was absolutely fluid and performed incredibly well. And in balanced mode, the fans are a very pleasant 46 decibels, making it one of the quieter gaming laptops we've tested. Cranking up to boost mode in the profiles does give it more TGP and CPU wattage at the cost of fan noise, and we found that whilst gaming in this mode, it did perform slightly better, but the fans were running at about 50 decibels. But that's still really good compared to a lot of other gaming laptops out there. Now being a compact aluminium chassis, it does get a bit warm for my liking, especially around the WASD keys and the palm rest, but that's kind of be to expected because it does have to radiate that heat not only through the vents but through the system as well to keep those temperatures down. But you can see from our infrared temperature, it still wasn't anything particularly uncomfortable to keep your hands on for longer gaming sessions. Now outside of gaming, I usually keep this in balanced mode because it's still incredibly powerful for my media consumption and for the work that I do on this laptop, whilst retaining the actual quietness of the fans that you hardly even know it's running. And I absolutely love that about the Razers. They've absolutely tuned the profiles to make this an enjoyable laptop for work as well as for play. And this year Razer have also added a silent profile as well, which caps the CPU down even more. And now I haven't found a use for this yet, but I'm sure somebody out there will. It's nice that they've given you that option. Now Synapse is the only piece of software Razer have installed on this Windows installation, so there's no other bloatware. And although Synapse isn't perfect, it's a very intuitive piece of software in my opinion that lets you control the profiles, the lighting, any other Razer peripherals that you may attach to the system, as well as also changing your MUX switch and the screen refresh rate. And this year, Razer have also added function keys for switching the profiles and the refresh rate, so you don't have to keep opening up the software every time you want to do it. It's been really handy for me. So when we tested battery life on this machine, I wasn't expecting anything special. All the 12th generation gaming laptops we've tested have been pretty poor. So switching this machine to the silent profile at 60 Hz and then running our usual YouTube streaming test over Wi-Fi at 200 nits, we got 5 hours and 50 minutes of battery life on this 1080p model. The QHD model got about 30 minutes less, which is pretty much what you would expect with a high resolution panel, and still pretty good. And that makes this the best battery life we've received of any of the 12th generation gaming laptops we've tested so far. And as with all the other 12th generation CPUs we've tested, the performance on battery is incredibly snappy, and I love that about Intel because with AMD they do throttle the CPUs down when you're on battery, which does give you better battery life, but does make the system feel less responsive on battery than on mains. With an Intel system, when you're on battery, it doesn't feel like you're on battery, you feel like you're on mains. But if you are doing anything demanding, you're going to deplete that battery fast. So you're going to need to carry either the 240 watt pretty large power adapter with you, but also this laptop does have power delivery, so you can plug in a USB-C charger and trickle charge it. So you won't get full performance over USB-C, but if you're away from home and you're working, you can certainly get by plugging in a USB-C adapter. So there we go. Razer, as usual, have made a great all-around laptop. But who should buy this machine? It is incredibly expensive. Well, if you only plan to game on the laptop, I think there are other viable options that would suit you better, especially for the price. But if you're looking for a powerful work machine that can also game, I think this really could be a contender. And I'd much rather buy something like a Razer blade for doing my work and a bit of gaming on the side than maybe a Dell XPS that as soon as you fire up the 3050 Ti and a CPU, it throttles like crazy to keep it that tiny slim chassis. So in my opinion, this makes a great work and play laptop. But I would recommend, although I do like this 1080p screen, I would recommend most people go for that QHD panel because it's a better panel in everyday use, especially if you're working. Thank you for watching.